Hello, everyone, and welcome to another presentation for the Fruitfest 90-day program. We're coming up to the last week. Well, this is the last week now, and we have a very special guest, Dr. Douglas Graham. And maybe Doug isn't, I feel like Doug sometimes doesn't really get the credit he deserves sometimes in the raw vegan community, but I think that's coming back. And he's a real master teacher, coach, trainer, not just of athletes, but of all types of people trying to live on a raw vegan diet, trying to live a healthy lifestyle. And he is someone that was a big influence on myself and continues to be. And I was just speaking earlier on, literally just a few minutes ago, to Chris Kendall, and we were talking a lot about a lot of the things we learned from Doug, and the philosophies in particular, the hygiene philosophy with his own twist on it, has always been so important. But I think that what I think is important is that he viewed the raw vegan diet as a lifestyle that could be thrived on long term. And his message, as far as I could see, was about creating a lifestyle that works long term for people, and not just something that people do for a short period of time for some healing benefit or from some spiritual benefit or whatever, but actually creating a program that can work for people. And I think Doug was one of the few teachers that really put that together and made it possible for people. And I think that over time, for sure, he'll get a lot more credit for that than some people want to give him right now. So Doug, I want to pass it on to you. And you are going to be talking tonight about making healthy choices for life. And the reason that I've asked you to speak about that is I think that is the thing that's missing for some people, is how do they keep this going long term? How do they make it work for their life? How do they make their lifestyle work around it, and so on? And also, like, how do you approach health choices throughout your life? What's the philosophy? What's the mindset? What's the things that you consider when a challenge comes up in your life, which I'm sure it sometimes can, even when you eat the healthiest diet? So I wanted to pass it over to you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'll go and get some more people to join because we're a bit low on numbers here, but I'm going to enjoy this a lot, learning from you anyway. So thank you very much, Doug.
Sure, Ronnie. First of all, it's a treat to be here with you. And I stand really strong for the things I believe in, and I'm not afraid to stand. And I know sometimes I rub people the wrong way just for that. And I look at you like as such a dear friend, and I know that sometimes I've just frustrated the heck out of you, and I'm sorry for every time I have. But like I say, I have to stand up for the things that are important to me. And I think that's becoming more clear in today's political world, that we need to stand up. We can't just get washed over. I wasn't a healthy kid. I was going to an allergy doctor every week for 6 years, getting shots in my arm. I didn't consider myself an unhealthy kid, but I didn't realize how unhealthy I was, how much school I missed because of allergies and illness. And I remember breaking 105 fever more than one time, and had every childhood disease long before there was anything like vaccinations for such things. But then I eventually got the vaccinations and went through that whole process of illness that associates with that. Had lots of things that just weren't right. I never left the house without tissues in my pocket. I wasn't a nerd. I didn't have pencils up here, but I had tissues there or in my back pocket. And I was terribly accident prone. I wasn't clumsy. I was an athletic kid, but just all the time getting hurt. And it just seemed like there was a disconnect, a discoordination going on between what I thought I was capable of doing and what or what I thought I should be capable of doing, and what I could actually end up doing, and or how quickly I could get it done. And it was just always just, I felt a little like a bull in a china shop. I was almost afraid. We had a store called China and Glass Shop in town, and I was kind of afraid to walk in there because, oh boy, like I'm going to break something for sure. So when I finally got a taste of health and found out how spectacular that could really feel, this was something I did not want to let go of. Now, I will say that I began the journey theoretically because, the theory was, the first time I remember thinking much about nutrition, I was only 4 or 5 years old, and we used to go every summer. There was a market. A farmer had a market. Mr. Lorino was a farmer, and he had a little stand at the end of the street that we would drive by often on the way home, and we'd stop at Mr. Lorino's market and get fresh corn. And he would occasionally, we'd go start picking out corn, and he'd come over and say, "Oh no, don't take that corn. That was picked this morning. Here, let me send the boys out to the fields and they'll get you some fresh corn right now because it's better for you. It's better corn." And I remember, 6 or 7 years old, and my grandma explaining to me that when she would cook all the vegetables, that the nutrients from the vegetable, I didn't even know what nutrients were, but all the goodness, I think she might have said, from the vegetables, it all goes down into the water below underneath the steamer. And I'm going, this is interesting. There's little things in there that are nutritious. And by the time I was 8 and saw the nurse had a poster on the wall said, "Apple a day keeps the doctor away." And after that, every health teacher I ever had, and I can name them all, but every health teacher I had said fruits and vegetables are good for you. So at some point while I was making healthier changes, I started wondering about maybe I'd be better off just eating more fruits and vegetables, since that's what all my education taught me, rather than just go to the health food store and buy the non-salted peanut butter, or go to the health food store and believe them that the sesame sticks made with honey were better than the sesame sticks made with sugar. And just start wondering, is cacao really better than sweetened chocolate? Or, I mean, there was just so many, and I realized like I made hundreds of changes, but they were all minute, and they really didn't get me anywhere. And so I started making bigger changes. Became vegetarian and stuck with that for a long time. And that was a major mind shift, to become a vegetarian. But it only made, and I felt better, but not magnificently so. And 7 years of vegetarian, always hearing about vegan, I finally said, okay, let's try vegan. And I felt better, but not magnificently so. That was a relatively big change and then I started hearing about raw, and I remember the first few times I heard about it, and I thought the first time I heard about it, I thought the guy was crazy for sure. He's a nutcase. But eventually I said, maybe it's worth the experiment. Got to find out for myself. I'm that kind of guy. So I tried the experiment. I said, okay, we'll go raw for a month. 2 nights ago, I was being interviewed. It's been a busy week for interviews. But 2 nights ago, I was being interviewed by a woman who heard about another woman in North Carolina who lost more than 100 pounds on raw food. And she's being what's called an influencer on social media. and she's making a big deal about it and has quite a few followers, to the point where she said, okay, let me do something with all this. And she's now opening up a restaurant in somewhere in North Carolina, I think. Could have been South Carolina for sure. And she's opening up a restaurant. And as part of that, this woman who's on the health scene for a magazine wanted to do an interview with me because the lady opening the restaurant mentioned me as her mentor. So she called me up and we talked for a little while. It turns out she's brand new. She's never had this job before in her life, doesn't really know much, admitted that she doesn't really know much, but it was a job, and she's only been doing it for a couple months. And she asked me the question, what's the difference between vegan and raw vegan? And I said, starch. That's basically the difference. I mean, okay, yeah, you might steam a cauliflower or something, but basically the difference in mindset between a vegan and a raw vegan is starch. And it was kind of funny because we've got a house guest at the moment, and she had a friend of hers who she's known for a very long time, called her up yesterday and said she wants to go raw vegan just out of the blue. I mean, she's nowhere near, I mean, she's not a vegetarian. She's very mainstream, but she said, I've had enough of illness. I want to go raw vegan. You've had great results. I want to get those results. She goes, what's the difference between, you know, what is it all about? What's raw vegan all about? And the lady, our house guest, said, starch. It's all about starch. So I stopped eating starch. I started using fruit. It wasn't easy to do. It was challenging because I didn't have any framework of reference of how much fruit to eat. And at the same time, I'm getting these magnificent results. I'm getting clarity of mind that I couldn't even imagine. I'm getting recall of things that I didn't think I had actually. I knew I'd studied French, but I couldn't remember any of it. All of a sudden, I could remember loads of it. I could learn things that I hadn't been able to learn and remember and pull out vocabulary words. And I had two things mentally that always used to happen to me. One is I would digress and then digress, just having a conversation, letting it flow. And then I'd look at the other person and go, what were we talking about? And I don't know if that ever happens to you, but it used to happen to me a lot. And that kind of stopped happening. I'm the one who knows what were we talking about. And the other thing was that I would be talking to somebody and want to use a specific word to describe something, but I couldn't access the word. And I could even give a definition of the word and they'd go, oh yeah, that's nomenclature or that's aesthetic or whatever the word was. And I go, yes, that's it, exactly. And it was odd not to have that recall of a specific word. And that went away. And I could remember. I remember when my grandma said she had CRS and we didn't know what it was, but now I've got RS. I can remember stuff. So it was sort of fascinating that for the first time in my life, I could do endurance exercise. I'd never, ever been able to do anything cardio. I'd always get out of breath. And all of a sudden now I'm raw vegan and I'm just like unlimited cardio. I've done a bunch of ultras, done marathons, done lots of century rides, done things that were cardio, with my arms, rowing cardio. Didn't seem to matter. I could do cardio all day long. And it just, I remember saying to my dad one time, I go, do you ever have that feeling that you could just run forever? And he just looked at me and he said, not anymore. But it still is like, I go, well, that's the feeling I'm getting. Like I can just go forever. And this was very nice. This was, last night I did another interview and in that interview got asked a question by an audience member, which was, If you knew you were going to die tomorrow, what would you eat today? Would you go back to eating cooked food, or would you go back to eat pizza, or, what would you eat? And I go, I mean, if I could eat whatever I wanted to eat, if I had absolute total choice, I could eat my favorite thing, I'd eat Champadak. I would say for sure, Champadak. And that led into a conversation of what is Champadak, which I won't go into here, but by far and away, I like it. I really like it. If I have to pick my favorite, I'd say Champadak. But there's 100 other things that would probably make it onto my top 3 list, and they'd all be vying for that number 2 spot. And maybe 100 other things in the top 2 list, but they'd all be tied. So it's hard to bubble up above that. But I said, I don't crave cooked food. I don't desire it. I'm not longing for it or wishing for it. Once I was asked if cooked food had no negative consequences to the environment, your health, or anything else, would you eat it? And the answer is, of course, I'd eat it if there was no negative consequences, but there are huge negative consequences. And consequences is a lot of what our life is about. It's got to be. I know there's some people who can't think past the next couple of breaths or the next couple of bites. But I think the vast majority of people see that they're going to live. They're going to live for 5 more years, 10 more years, 20 more years, 50 more years. They're going to live a long time more. And some of the consequences they have to consider is, where are they heading 10 years down the road? And I'll give you an example. I've asked thousands and thousands of people to raise their hand if they'd rather be stronger, weaker, or the same 10 years from now. 99 out of 100 say stronger. Every once in a while, somebody says, no, I'm happy the way I am. But that's rare. Most people say, I want to be stronger. And I go, okay, what are you doing to get stronger? Well, I'm not doing anything to get stronger. Or they'll tell me something they're doing, but it's really muscular endurance, not strength. Or it's some bodybuilding, but not strength. And mostly, though, they're not doing anything. And they're just waiting for the strength fairy to come visit them in the middle of the night and endow them with strength somehow. And I'm going, man, if you're not on that road to getting stronger, if you're not walking down that road and sometimes jogging, to expect strength to just come upon you is unrealistic. And the same thing happens with health. When it dawned on me that I want to accumulate health, that I want to have enough of a backlog of health so that if something went wrong, I got hit by a bus, or, something happened, had an injury, had an illness, whatever it was, that I had enough reserve health to sustain me through that period of time that it would take for me to recover and come back. And it's odd, that we use that word recover, because I think that was one of my big insights, is when I started relating the word recover from sport to recover our health, and realized that those two things were very much the same. And the necessities, the requirements, the things that allowed both types of recovery to happen were actually the same things. So that I could start to teach athletes how to recover in the same way that I could teach somebody who'd lost their health how to recover it. And it would be by doing the same things. And the beauty of that, the magnificent simplicity, the seamless simplicity of that, was something that struck me as very profound. It got to a point where I could start to become coherent. I could become eloquent. I could make my thoughts known in a way that people go, oh, I see what you're talking about. This isn't just an idea. Uh, no, it's not just an idea. We actually do accumulate levels of health or degrees of health, if you wish. We call it vitality, and if you have enough vitality to take a hit, and not be, oh my, I think I've broken a rib. Like I don't want to be there. I don't want to be, um, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to be so. I've had people tell me like they're environmental wimps, right? Like they can't go into a city because the dirty air, or they couldn't drink a glass of tap water even if they were thirsty because it would make them sick for a week, or like can't, oh no, never fly. I mean, the air in airplanes is just terrible. I can't go up there. Uh, I I want to be sensitive, but I don't want to be fragile. I don't want to be vulnerable. And I found by building my health, not just with raw foods, not just with low fat vegan fare, not just by eating more organic stuff and fresh foods, but by taking care of my other needs. I did an interview with two of my mentors one time. Well, it wasn't even an interview. It was a conversation with two of my mentors who were in a car. So I had their unlimited attention and undivided, and and they were both turning 70 that year. And I asked them, as you look back on your life, what would you change if you had the chance to do it again? How could you have improved your health? What do you think, you didn't do as well as you could have? And both of them said the same thing. They said, we worked too much and slept too little. That I mean, I was half their age, but it struck me as profound, just profound. Like, wow, I always had tried to get by with as little sleep as possible. How much, what's the smallest amount I can get and still stay functional? And I really had to revise my view and realize that I actually had to revise my view on a lot of things about my health because I was doing a lot of things in exactly that way, in that same way of what's the minimum I could do and it would be enough to get by, and and I wouldn't fail. And that's not really where I wanted to be. I wanted to excel. I wanted to feel far better than okay. Um, when I ask people how they're doing and they say okay, I think the American version of that is fair to middling. Like, I don't want to be fair to middling. I want to be spectacular, superb, terrific, um, and expecting better tomorrow. I'm terrific today, but I'm expecting it to be better tomorrow. But I'm not expecting it to get better tomorrow unrealistically. Okay, I got out, I moved around, played with the dogs a bit, took a nice walk, got some fresh air and sunshine, stayed hydrated, ate lots of fruits and vegetables, gave myself some personal time to build my personal self into a better person tomorrow, learned a bit, engaged in some conversation with others, some of whom were like-minded and some of whom were not, helped some other people, did all of the things that are really like components of building health. And as many of those components as I can squeeze into every day, I want to do that because, it's relatively easy to take great care of yourself when it's relatively easy to take great care of yourself. It's when times are challenging that taking great care of yourself helps you develop into the person that you're going to become tomorrow or the next day. The number of times I've seen this in sport where people would do something that they didn't know they could do, but the coach brought them along, and eventually they got to a point where, wow, I can do this. And the mind instantly accepts, yes, I can do this now. And then they expect to be able to do it every time. We see it in kids. They go, I can do this. Watch me, mom. I can do this. And they might make you wait 10 or 20 times before they get it right again, even one more time. And we understand the difference between a professional and an amateur is an amateur practices till they get it right, and a professional practices till they don't get it wrong under any circumstances. So as a person who specializes in health, I want to be able to build my health under the most challenging situations, because it's easy when it's easy. But when you get somewhere and they don't have all your favorite foods, what are you going to do? When the conversation starts to feel like it's maybe not supportive of your views, you're being challenged, you know, when a lot of stuff goes wrong and you want to start being negative, like, do you just dive into self negative talk, or do you stay with your affirmations? Do you rephrase? Do you look at things another way and go, oh, you know, failure is nowhere's failure's great. I mean, every success is built on a whole lot of failures. Failures are just the stepping stones that take you on the trail leading you to success. Failure is a temporary thing. When you start quitting, I mean, once you've quit, you can't undo that in your life. You can't, like, okay, you can start again, in which case you didn't really quit. You just temporarily stopped. But quitting, that's permanent, really. And so how do you talk to yourself? To me, I know that there's certain things that are easy for me to put off. They're just really easy to put off. You know, it's really easy to put off doing pull-ups. For me, it's very easy to I have to really set the goal. I have to set the standard. I have to say, look, it has to be, or I'm just not going to do pull-ups for some period of time. It could be quite a long period of time. But I know my pull-ups aren't getting any better when I'm not doing them, and they are when I am. And the same thing with my eating habits, or my self-talk, or my personal care, or my hygiene, personal hygiene, or my anything else about who I am and how I develop myself. This so very much is determining, who am I becoming? Am I staying consistent and true to myself when it's not super easy to do so? I mean, heck, when it's easy to do so, who cares? I mean, anybody can do it when it's easy. I think personally, you know, people say, like, oh, it's so hard to be raw food. And I go, no, it's hard to be sick. For me, the hardest thing in the world is being sick. I can't stand it when I'm sick. And when I have people around me, close to me, friends, relatives, neighbors, who are ill, and I hear how they just suffer and they can't stand it, and I'm just going, holy cow, like, being sick is so tough. I would do practically anything in order not to be sick. Fortunately, we've got this wonderful setup where all, and it's a word you have to, like, really respect, all of the things that are required for us to be healthy are pleasurable experiences. However that was created in the world, and I don't claim to know, but however it came to be that we need fresh air and sunshine and all the things that we need, every single one of them is a pleasurable experience. I mean, you think about meeting somebody who's just so wonderful, so nice to meet them. They're so uplifting, and we describe them as a breath of fresh air, and you think after a winter of being indoors a lot and maybe cold too much, and it's the first day of May and the sun is beating down, and you go out and you feel the warmth, and you're just like, oh yeah, let it on my skin. I want to feel more sun. It feels so good, and fresh air and sunshine and pure water and fresh fruit and a really good night's sleep where you've got all the sleep you desired. You rested and you felt refreshed and renewed and invigorated. You go to sleep with no energy at all. You wake up with a day's worth of energy again to do it again, with enthusiasm, newfound enthusiasm. There's a tremendous number of successful people who make a pretty hard and fast rule that they're going to look at all the things they have to do for the day, and they're going to attack the most difficult ones first, because first thing in the morning is when they have the energy to do it. And once they've done it, it's done, and they can be patting themselves on the back. And yes, I did all the hardest things. Everything else from here on out is going to be easy. So let me just get those other things done. And overall, I think that the healthy path is so much more rewarding, so much more pleasant, so much more fulfilling, so much more satisfying than any other path that I've ever tried. I mean, there's things I haven't tried. I've never been a heroin addict, or I don't know, few other things I haven't tried, but the healthy path just by far and away just feels good. And I want to feel good as much of my waking and sleeping time on this planet as I possibly can. I want to feel good all the time if I possibly can. And when I don't feel good, I want to make the proper adjustments so that I can feel good again and get back to feeling good. So is it all about food? No, by no means is it all about food. Heck, nutrition isn't even all about food. We get vitamin D from the sun. We get B12 from microbes, from the waste metabolism of microbes that live in our throat. We get, a lot of people talk about the vitamin H and P, the happiness and pleasure vitamins, and vitamin F, the fun vitamin, and we get a lot of things that affect our outlook and our functions. Maybe it's difficult to understand that the function of every cell at this very moment, the functioning of every cell of your body is based upon your mindset. Your cells are actually in communication with and listening to how you're talking to yourself. Are you an upbeat person? Are you beating yourself up? Are you positive? Are you saying, you know what, next, I want to do what's next. Let's put the past behind me. Let's get on with the future. Do we spend our time viewing the obstacles, or do we look at the goals? And I think when we look at the goals, I know when we look at the goals, that's where we head. There's something called object fixation. So if you're riding a bicycle in between two posts and you're looking at the post, you're going to ride your bike into the post. But if you look at the gap, you'll ride your bicycle through the gap. And same thing. I've always laughed at the expression ski in the trees, because you don't ski the trees. You ski the spaces in between the trees, or you ski into the trees, and that's never fun. So the same thing with our health. I mean, I want to be truly fixated on healthful living, because I can then do everything else that's important, interesting, fun, rewarding, satisfying. I can, if I have my health, I can do everything else that I want to do in life. I'm not neurotic about my health. I'm not like obsessed about my health to the point where it stops me from being healthy. I learned how to be healthy, found out that that's actually the easiest way, the path of least resistance. Okay, are there some aspects of healthful living that aren't supported by society quite so much? Yes, you have to go against the flow, the tide of society a little bit, but there's plenty of room to do that. And once you do, you get a lot of respect for being the healthy one. I become the health, in the 70s, I might have been a health nut, but today I'm considered a health connoisseur. I'm considered a health expert. And I find that to be incredibly rewarding day in and day out, but not because, as Ronnie, as you were saying, like I get the mention that I deserve, or the notoriety, or the respect, or whatever, the credit. I'm not looking for credit, but I do find it exceptionally satisfying to be a force for good in the world. I find it a great satisfaction to me to be able to help people. I enjoy that I can still be useful, productive, and in demand, as opposed to the old Jerry Garcia album, Old and in the Way. I don't want to be old and in the way. I want my wisdom and my experience and my intellect and my education to benefit others. And when I stop being of benefit to others, I'm not sure how important it is for me to be here anymore. But certainly right now, it's important to be here because I am of benefit to others and I like it. And I can't really help others until I first help myself. I can't show others how to live healthfully until I'm doing it myself. Not that I can't teach things that I don't know how to do myself, or that I have to be perfect. I'm not perfect. But in order for me to continue having the insights that allow me to be a leader at this point in my life, I have to keep living the lifestyle. I have to continue to pursue my strength, for instance, or it'll go away. I have to continue to pursue my health, or it'll go away. But as I pursue it, I keep having insights so that I can present to others what's next down this path. There aren't a lot of people who have been eating raw foods, and especially not low-fat raw vegan, for as long as I have. And I can describe the mileposts a little better than somebody who's brand new. Somebody's got 10 years into it, well, bless them, and that's fantastic. But they can't really tell you what it's like to have 30 years into it or 40 years into it until they've got there. So for me, that I think expresses why health is so important to me, and that it's not just about raw food, but certainly raw food. You know, there's the expression, money isn't everything, but it's way ahead of whatever's in second place. I'd say the same thing about raw foods and health. Raw foods is not the answer to every problem, but it's so often the answer to so many of the problems that people have in the environment, in their health, in their life, in their consciousness. It's so often the answer that I think it's appropriate to put a tremendous emphasis on the low-fat, raw vegan lifestyle. And by lifestyle, we open it up to say, oh, yeah, fruits and vegetables might be the most nutritious foods in the world, but if you're completely couch potato, if you're just so sedentary that you never do anything, your calorie needs can be exceptionally low. When I'm inactive, my calorie needs go down by almost half of what they are when I'm being very active, which means I take in half as much protein and half as much calcium and half as much zinc and half as much of every other nutrient because I'm eating half as much food. I don't change how much protein, how much fat, how much carbs in ratio to each other. I just change how much total food I eat. And in that sense, being physically active is an essential part of the health package because it's part of the nutrition package as well as the fitness package. It affects how you sleep. It affects your emotional outlook. It affects your ability to make decisions. When you're being physically active, you're making decisions almost continually. And being good at making decisions is a big part of healthy living. So over and over and over, the various aspects of health interact with each other. They're interconnected and interdependent upon each other. So I can't really look at one aspect of health, say it's the most important. But certainly raw foods and fitness, or as I've said, food and sport, these things so overshadow the rest, not in importance, but in how often we notice people have gone astray. But in the same sense, you know, mindset and the way you talk to yourself, lots of people could say that's number one. I'd have a hard time arguing that there is a number one. If I had to pick, I'd be more tempted to say the areas in your lifestyle where you're farthest astray from where you need to be are the ones that are most important to you currently. But that may change over time. And it may not apply to other people, which I find interesting on the social side of the world when we have this enlightenment about raw foods and you want to start turning others onto it, but really mostly you're just a pain in the neck to them because they don't want to be enlightened just yet. You can't force enlightenment on people. Nobody forced it on you and you can't force it on them. You got to find some other way to be a force for good in their life. And it's usually by leading with your successes. Let them see that you're happy and healthy and succeeding and productive and you're not sick and you're vibrant and you're smiling and you got a glow on and you're feeling good all the time and you're volunteering and you're energetic and all of a sudden and you're taking good care of yourself and you're making it all happen effortlessly. I mean, health really is effortless. So Somebody asked me the other day if it's all about willpower. And I said, I don't think there's any willpower involved at all. I don't think there's any willpower. I think it's simply a matter of going after what you want. And going after what you want requires no willpower at all. If that's something you want, you'll go after it. In fact, if you want to know what's important to you, just look at your current lifestyle and it'll show you what you think is important currently. And if some of that needs to change, you either need to associate with the people who have what you want in live associations, or associate with the people who have what you want in books and tapes, or associate with the people who have what you want by going to their retreats and events and presentations and things of that sort. But invariably, the people who have what you want will rub off on you if you spend more time with them, studying them, learning about them, finding out what made them tick. So if you want to become a better person in some way or another, it's got to be what you really want. Once you're going after what you really want in life, you'll find that that requires no special effort. No willpower will keep you on the straight and narrow path. It doesn't happen that way. It happens because that's what you want, and that's where you'll go.
Thank you very much, Doug. That's fantastic so far. And maybe if some of the audience want to ask some questions, I'm certainly got a lot of questions myself, but I think that I mean, when I started to listen to you, I never heard anyone talk about health the way that you talked about it. And you seem to have a different way of thinking about it and looking at it. And you don't really, I mean, you talk about the raw food diet, but it's always in relation to the idea of building, recovering, maintaining health. And it seems like, I wouldn't say that you worship it, but it almost feels like it's a very important, like it's a very important core principle for your life. And everyone kind of makes out that it is for them as well. Everyone kind of makes out that it's important, but you seem to have that real, you seem to have imparted on myself and others this real strong idea of health as being something more than what most people think, which is that if they're not feeling sick, then they're healthy. That's what they kind of think. Where does that come from? Who did you sort of take that from or learn it from? If you understand what I'm saying.
I think I do. And well, I hope I do. And I thank you for saying that. As I said at the start, you know, I wasn't the most healthy kid. I did have every childhood disease, tons out. I mean, my doctor told me I was allergic to my own antibodies, and that if I ever got sick, I would be allergic to the antibodies that I'd produce, and I would get sicker, and just learn to live with it, because you're going to be sick your whole life, you know. And to be honest, although I'm honored to have studied with some of the greats in the field of health and to have read extensively those whom I couldn't meet, I don't think that that's where it came from. I think it came from when I got out of school, when I finished my medical training to become a chiropractic physician. I opened up a retreat center, a fasting retreat center. And I was the new kid on the block. I mean, there were seven fasting centers in Florida. There were many others around the country back then. And I was the new kid on the block. I had no reputation. People had no reason to come to me particularly. And I didn't have a platform. I wasn't writing for the magazines where they might find me. I wasn't speaking at the conventions where people might find me. It was a fascinating, there was no social media. There were no, you know, you didn't have home computers happening yet, really. And the people who found me were people who were told by other fasting retreat professionals, or the people who ran the retreats, that they couldn't come to their center. People who got turned down, and they would call, we don't have to name the names, but various people go, no, 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 fasting you is going to be way too risky. I don't need that in my business. And so for the best part of a decade, my entire practice was dealing with the sickest of the sick, the hopeless, the people who are already told there's nothing else you can do. We won't even take you at a health retreat. We won't take you at a fasting retreat. We won't take you at a hygiene center. You're beyond, like, I'm sorry, it's just not worth the risk. And the compassion side of it certainly played a part. But the emergency for me also played a part. I was a young, enthusiastic doctor. I didn't know better. And I believe that health works for everyone, for that, that it possibly can. We understand there's a limitation of matter, and if your arm gets chopped off, you're probably not going to grow a new arm. You've exceeded the limitation of matter, but the while there's breath, there's hope. And so I took people who were turned down by a lot of other doctors. I turned down people who the orthopedist would send me the patient and say, it really doesn't matter what you do with this patient because she's going to die of pneumonia within the next 3 weeks. And 3 weeks later, she's up walking around with a, completely healed, feeling phenomenal. And I'm going, yeah, no pneumonia, not on my watch. I know how to prevent that, and people who were just hopeless in so many ways, from drug addicts to people with, I had a lady come that weighed, I have to do it in stone. She weighed 4 stone. I had a woman come to me, an adult woman, fully functional, carrying her own luggage, her own suitcase, 4 stone, even, not 4 stone 1. She was actually 3 stone 13. And, you start seeing people like that, and you, this is amazing to see them rebuild their health. It's just to see how far they can go to become practically invulnerable. It's shock, awe, and respect of how healthy we really can be. And I know I've talked to you about it, that I went through periods of time where I wasn't watching any pro sports because I just didn't feel like the athletes were trying that hard. And I knew how good they could be if they really tried, and incorporated healthful living into their total lifestyle, rather than just, hey, I'm really talented and it all works for me because I'm 25. So my sense of profound awe at what we were given, the birthright of health that each and every one of us was endowed with, and we frittered it away, was built into me by the people who were so sick,
Right.
and then recovered their health and sent me Christmas cards every year for a few decades, or became fully functional people who, instead of weighing less than 6 stone as an adult male, almost 2 meters tall adult male at 6 stone, who's cut himself with thousands of cuts up and down his arms out of self-hatred, who's been a drug addict since his middle teens, who woke up in hospital from overdoses time and time again till he lost track of how many times he'd overdosed as a 16-year-old, to becoming a 24-year-old who's gotten all the training necessary to now go out and help kids who've had a tougher life than he did, and spent the last 20 years now just counseling youth. And that inspires me.
Sure, sure. Amazing. Yeah, looking forward to seeing you on Saturday at the conference.
Me too. Oh,
Should
that's going to be
fun.
great. That's so cool.
Should be fun. Yeah, yeah. We'll see how it goes. And yeah, we only asked you for about an hour of your time, so that's coming up around about now. So thank you very
Yeah,
much for
it's my
being part of
pleasure.
this again, be part of the festival, and looking forward to seeing you again on Saturday. Any last minute questions, anyone?
No, but I'll just say hi, Doug. Looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. Yay.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to it too.
Yeah, should be good. Should be a good weekend. Take care. Thanks for tonight. Really nice.
Bless
Really
your
You
heart.
guys.
Bless your heart. We'll see you soon, Ronnie.
Yeah.